people can become whatever they want to be. So today I'm going to be doing a complete series review on the anime Monster, also known as Naoki Urasawa's Monster. A 74-episode anime produced by Studio Madhouse that ran from April 2004 through September of 2005. So essentially, I could briefly sum up the plot. Young Dr. Tenma Kenzo one day saves a little boy's life, ultimately finds out that this little boy grew up to become a serial killer and kill many different people. He feels it's his obligation to stop this kid and essentially kill him, and sets out on a journey to find him and do so. But to be honest with you, that short explanation doesn't begin to describe the amount of depth and abundance of quality that the series contains. Now, at 74 episodes, you're definitely going to be thinking to yourself, okay, this is very long. And it is. Essentially, it is a very long story with a lot of episodes that sometimes can feel episodic in a way, because either this episode's purpose is to develop Tenma in one way or another, give him some character development, introduce new characters, different characters, or essentially just progress the plot in a very small and subtle way, or sometimes a huge and oh my god way. Now, where the series begins, it definitely sets up things very nicely. It kind of gives a little moral choice to the main character that kind of is the catalyst to where the story leads. Because in the beginning of the series, the main character, Tenma Kenzo, is essentially just a doctor that wants to ultimately further his career. He's a good guy, but he still has dreams of becoming, just an all-time big doctor. He has a rich wife whose father is head of the hospital, so he does have some pretty big dreams and ultimately wants to do so. But it's that one choice that he makes with that boy that changes not only his life, but essentially a lot of lives. And the story focuses on not only his journey as well, but the impact that the antagonist and his wrath of destruction and carnage ultimately leads and impacts on the other people. The antagonist, psychopath serial killer Johann Liebert, is one of the major things that drives the plot as well, because it's the things that he does and the choices that he leaves for Tenma that leads the character in one direction or another. And I feel as though while, yeah, there are some episodes that feel okay, it feels a little bit episodic, and it gives you a kind of case closed type of feel where it's like, wow, this feels like it has nothing to do with the main plot. Ultimately, it usually does. 9 times out of 10, it has some relevance to either the main character, the main story, or these new characters that get introduced ultimately have some relevance to the main characters and everything that's going on. The story is set in Germany, so it definitely has a vast different feel than you're probably used to with other anime that are usually based in Tokyo or somewhere in Japan or in this magical world. This is more so grounded towards reality, so you get to see different aspects of Germany. You get to see even the Czech Republic. You get a lot of different settings that you're not used to, and that was definitely something that I appreciated, seeing a different atmosphere and getting a different look at a different, overall country and environment. One of the things about this series that I felt drove it as well is a lot of moral choices and kind of trying to understand things, because one of the complaints I had while watching the series is I wanted to see for a long time more of Johann. I wanted to see him being essentially the monster that he was hyped up to be. And ultimately, he truly is a monster. But I think that is the wrong mindset to come into the series, because I didn't realize until midway through that you're supposed to be looking at it more so, not just in a literal term of who's the, psychopath serial killer, because ding, 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 it's obviously Johann, but you're more so supposed to look at it to the subtleties and the consequences and the reactions and the choices that you make in life kind of determine who you are. Had Tenma not saved that boy that day, he would have stopped a lot of people from being killed. He could have lived a happy life with his rich wife and eventually take over the hospital. But it's that very decision that ultimately changes everything. And you will go through that a lot in the series. Can Tenma do it? Can Tenma actually become the killer that he set out to be, to take out Johann? And the series just has so many different plot twists and turns, even till the very end. It's not until literally the last episode that I felt you get all the pieces of the puzzle. And even then, I was still left thinking, wow, what the fuck? This is a mind fuck and a half. And just going on story alone, to be honest with you, this is one of those series that I put up there as a masterpiece. The story alone in and of itself is simple enough, yet complex and deep, that it just can kind of be absorbed by anyone, and yet it's going to leave you scratching your head at the end. I'm still thinking what the fuck happened, but ultimately it's good in that aspect that you can enjoy it. You can subtly look at it and be like, oh wow, this guy is on this journey, he's trying to find the serial killer, simple enough. There's characters that are being impacted by the events of what's going on. But then it gets a lot more complex with a lot of the backstories and a lot of the mystery behind Johann Liebert, if that is his real name. Now, going into the characters, not only do you have the main character, Tenma Kenzo, which kind of evolves as the series progresses. He starts off as a bit mild-mannered, kind of has a goal to become a doctor. Slowly but surely, his goals and priorities change. very sharply to want to basically kill somebody to set things right, and ultimately his journey to getting to basically that point where he feels he can do so. Then you also have Anna Liebert, pretty much the twin sister to Johann that you see early on in the series, and kind of her life and her take on things and the impact that her brother has left behind, and transforming her life from kind of being, just a quiet student after the events of the beginning of the series to ultimately having to deal with finding out what her brother ultimately is and trying to put a stop to him as well. You also have one of my personal favorite characters, Inspector Lunge, who is basically trying to track down Tenma because basically after the events of the beginning of the series, he gets blamed for basically certain murders that happen, and Inspector Lunge is trying to go after him and, basically bring him into custody. So you have essentially a wanted fugitive with Tenma Kenzo, you have a serial killer that is basically letting all the blame go on this guy, and then you have an inspector and pretty much most of the police force throughout Germany chasing after Kenzo. But then you get with each and every character just an amount of depth and kind of their lives and what they're going through. Inspector Lunge is so obsessed with these cases that pretty much he lets his personal life go to shit, essentially. He doesn't really give a fuck because he is so obsessed with work. So you have to deal with those issues in his life and kind of his obsessions and his point of view, because in his eyes, Tenma's a murderer. I need to get him. Nothing else matters. And eventually you have to deal with that. When you're going on this long journey, you're going to have to suffer the consequences. And I think that everybody in the series, in one way or another, suffer the consequences and the effect of this essential storm called Johann Liebert. You have the little boy Dieter, which at first, to be honest with you, I wasn't fond of him. I'm never that fond of bringing into essentially a very sophisticated story at that, a little kid into it. But he played very nicely. He wasn't that much into the story. There was times where you go episode after episode without even seeing him. And when you do see him, he has some sort of relevance either to calm down a character. A lot of times a little kid can, soften up the heart. Kids are very good at making you feel a little bit better about things, or, just kind of bring you down to reality. I think that's one of the purposes that this kid serves, but he's not without pain as well, without baggage. The things that we see with this character and where he comes from is very brutal. You have Ava Heinemann, which is pretty much a psycho-obsessed, drunken woman that is after Tenma and pretty much wants to see him burn for essentially leaving her brokenhearted. And you have that character and where she's going to go on her road. And again, a lot of the characters in this story are impacted majorly. And to be honest with you, the characters just serve a perfect blend, whether it's new characters that come into the story, again, with some small relevance and ultimately lead to bigger and better twists and turns and bigger things for these characters, or whatever the case may be. I feel as though nearly every character that was in the story served in one way or another to either develop these characters, the main cast, give better closure to certain aspects, or just add into the mythology and just the overall chaos of Johann Liebert. Again, a lot of the story is character driven in a sense, because these characters, it's them all going after Johann to a certain degree and trying to either take him out or understand him. Although, how do you really understand a psychopath? Now, art and animations is one of the things that this series unfortunately doesn't excel at very well. This was released during 2004 and 2005, which is nearly over a decade old at this particular point. And you gotta know that, it's gonna age a little bit. Unfortunately, I don't think it aged as gracefully as some series that, came out around that time, because you gotta look at it, 74 episodes, a seinen. It's not gonna be as popular as like the Hunt the Hunter, so they're not gonna invest that much money. And essentially, they wanted to adapt it very properly. It's almost perfect adaptation. Literally, page for page, they wanted to showcase each and every dialogue box, and almost nothing was skipped. So, art and animation, unfortunately, the animation at times can be a little wobbly. The art, it isn't the greatest, but I think it really suits the style and the overall tone of this show, because this is a dark story. This isn't a pretty story. It's not supposed to have models and busty kawaii bitches. Like, no, that's not what you're watching this for. You're watching this for a very deep and complex plot with interesting and essentially wild characters. So the art, for the most part, suits it. It's not the greatest thing ever. At times, it does look a little bit wonky. I remember one particular episode where, like, one of the characters I thought went through a time skip or something, but for the most part, the art suits it. Animation, however, definitely a lot weaker than I wish it was. The music, okay, for starters, the opening, it's just timeless. In all honesty, from the very moment you hear that guitar with the drums, it just suits it so well. Always playing up to the mystery, always giving you that really dramatic vibe, especially when a really dramatic scene is about to happen or something sad is about to happen. It just always suits it perfectly. The music is just fantastic. And I watched this English dub, and to be honest with you, I felt the English dub was one of the best I've heard in a long time. Honestly, it's up there with dubs like Hellsing Ultimate. I love that dub. I think that's an amazing dub. It's just really solid. There's performances that, to be honest with you, I've never seen the Japanese version, but they've made me cry. There were scenes where, Tenma is trying to resuscitate people that have been killed, and the voice actor just nails it on those screams, those wails, because if you can nail a scream or a crying scene that is believable, or just a random talking scene where you're just delivering a simple line of dialogue like, oh, I went to the pizza shop, and you make me believe that, you're very good. And I feel as though this is a very solid dub. One of my favorite dubs I've heard. The main character, the voice actor just nailed him. And if we're talking about just personal preference, my overall enjoyment of it, if I had to compare this series to something, it kind of reminds me of like a mix between the psychological warfare of Death Note without the second, the last 10 episodes or so, and like an episodic feel of like Case Closed. Not the story or anything, just the episodic feel that Case Closed pertains. So I would definitely have to say it reminds me of both of those. And if you love Death Note, you think Death Note is amazing, then to be honest with you, I feel as though this is a lot more deep and complex than that. And I just had a blast every night clicking on each and every episode, wondering what's going to happen to this character, who is this new character, what is his involvement, and kind of just seeing more into this character, Johann Liebert, and why is he such a villainous creature in a sense, and just so many twists and turns with this series. I mean, whether it's Wolfgang Grimmer, Franz Bonaparte, everything about this story really just was something else, and I'm still to this day wondering what the fuck happened at that ending, and honestly, it's really damn near close to a masterpiece. If it wasn't for short and small aesthetic problems such as the animation and it being very long, ultimately this would have been a damn near perfect series, because the story and the characters and the music and the voice acting, I give them all 10s. And if we're just talking enjoyment alone, it was just, again, one hell of a ride that I've been looking for. A great anime for a while. I'm always looking for those series that are really going to touch me, whether mentally, emotionally, and this did kind of a mixture of everything. Entertainment, mentally, it really had me thinking, still has me thinking. Emotionally, it really got me with a lot of different depths and just a lot of characters going through struggles. And with all that being said, I would give Naoki Urasawa's Monster a 9.5 out of 10. Story is one of the most deep and complex, and if you can get it on the first try and understand everything, good for you. But for me personally, I'm just like flabbergasted at how deep and amazing this series is, and it's making me want to check out more Naoki Urasawa works, whether it be manga or anime form, because it was that goddamn deep and good. And yes, again, it can be a little graining at times towards the beginning, especially with the episodic feel, but ultimately those parts still serve a purpose with giving development and advancement, so you can't completely look at it as, taking away. You gotta build on a journey to make other aspects of the story ultimately have meaning and impact. But if you've seen Monster or you read Monster, let me know what you think of it. Yeah, this is an anime review, but the story was just, again, one of the greatest stories I've seen in a really long time, probably ever. It's truly amazing and remarkable. What did you think of it? What do you think about some of the characters? What do you think about Johann Liebert? And who do you truly feel was the monster? And if you haven't seen Monster, I highly recommend you check it out. Again, 9.5 out of 10 for a complete series. That is one of the best scores I've given out personally, and I think it's very well justified because it's an amazing series. But that's all I have for this review. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed, if you could do so as well, that'd be awesome. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day.